How long have you been at Kamatage, Mr.
Doctor.
Mr. Doctor?
It's strange.
Maybe. Who am I to judge?
Pretty much already
You
started.
sound enthusiastic, Ron.
I am bugging. I'm so tired. But yeah, I'll talk about
What?
that later. Huh? Oh, I just
like-
came from a church camp.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, arrived like half an hour ago.
That's
Yeah.
right. I was wondering, you were like, oh, I might be a little late. And I was like, oh, whatever, he's probably like working or something like that.
Yeah. But anyways, nah. I mean, like, I figured I'd if I got home, I'd probably try and sleep, but then I wouldn't be able to sleep. So I was just like, oh, might as well just do this.
Might as well just do the podcast.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to our casual discussions with the boys. This is episode 15. I think it's episode 15. And we're looking at Doctor Strange. This movie, actually, I'll start off with my initial thoughts. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was great. I didn't know that much about Doctor Strange at all, outside of like the cartoons again. I just knew that we'd be introduced to like a very powerful character. He was really cool in the cartoons, and yeah, I understood that he was going to introduce more of a mystical element again. It's like, I know Thor did that in a sense, like introducing magic in a way, but this one was more focused on it in a different sense. Plus, it also talked about the multiverse, which is, you know, the focus of the sequel. So yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, this movie was great. Benedict Cumberbatch is a beast. Perfect for the role. Really good quips in the movie. And he's also that good balance of egotistic and someone who can be humbled. So yeah, it was cool. Cool to watch. All right, Balika, initial thoughts.
Shout out to Malika's Pro, first of all.
Don't mind the ISO here, guys. I went into Doctor Strange really excited because I'd started reading the comics a bit before the movie came out, and he's pretty much one of my top 3 to top 5 superheroes in the MCU and Marvel. And so when the rumors started swirling that Benedict was going to play him, I was like even more hyped for the movie. And then the photos came out, and he looked exactly like Doctor Strange should look like. So I went into it with lots of expectations and came out, and then they were all fulfilled. I really liked it. Just like Cedar said, he's just all the quips, the one-liners. It's almost like he brings a bit of Sherlock into it sometimes as well. And it's like a perfect intro for the multiverse. And it brings that whole other dimension to the MCU where we'd see the 9 realms and all that from Thor. And now we're actually seeing the magical realms and that whole other side of the MCU. So yeah, I really enjoyed watching it, and for me, it almost felt like a stage 1 or a phase 1 Marvel movie, but with the quality of phase 3. Like, it was just an intro of the character.
Oh, right, because it's origin, yeah.
Yeah, it was like the origin stories that we got in phase 1, but then they got all the experience and the knowledge that they gained from phase 1 and 2. And it was just like a perfect phase 3 movie.
Yeah, they did a good origin right in a way. I mean, the only other one during phase 2 out of Origins that I liked was Ant-Man. I think it was the only one there, right? But yeah. Fitzy, what were yours?
Yeah, mine were more interesting because originally they said Joaquin Phoenix was going to be Doctor Strange, and I still am really a big Joaquin Phoenix fan. So I was like, this is fantastic. This is going to be awesome. Then they're like, no, we're going with Benedict Cumberbatch. And as much as I like Benedict Cumberbatch, at the time, there was... Is it the way I'm saying his name? Is that why you're laughing, Mark?
As soon as I saw Malika's grin, I knew.
Cumberbatch. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's just complicated names, guys. So at the time, there was the big Sherlock phase. Everyone was going on about Sherlock. I didn't feel Benedict had really diverse as much at that point, besides Star Trek Into Darkness. But basically, like, obviously still a great actor, but obviously hadn't shown his range to besides Sherlock. So I was like, okay, this is cool, but not fully on board. And then I remember like running into Mark here in Coles or like Westwood Victory, and we were talking. He's like, "Oh, you're going to go and see Doctor Strange?" And at the time, I was like, it didn't register in my brain to go and see Doctor Strange. It didn't feel like that sort of. Guys, the chat's really distracting.
Sorry, yeah.
But yeah, it didn't come to an MCU film that I felt like I needed to go and see. And then went to Melbourne, visited a friend down there. I was like, let's go and see it. And honestly, I credit Doctor Strange as being the film that really got me back on board for a second time. As in Civil War, even though I enjoyed it, I started feeling after that like the MCU is not going the direction I wanted to go. And Doctor Strange was like, no. They're still doing, they're still going in different directions. They're still going to different paths. And yeah, overall, yeah, definitely enjoyed it. And definitely did enjoy how, like I said, it was something different. Like, yeah, sure, it was another origin story, but the approach they had with the mystic arts and all that, it was an interesting approach. So I'm really glad we're not doing a Joker podcast, because if I have to talk about Joaquin Phoenix and that, this chat will be going non-stop.
We were talking about it. I think me and Malika Fitz last time. How
it was when we were going to do it.
The other doctor, you can't tell me he doesn't look like Joaquin Phoenix.
He does look like
like a discount Joaquin Phoenix.
he really
So
does.
in a way, he was in the movie.
Maybe people saw like photos of that guy and they're like, "Oh, Joaquin Phoenix is doing Doctor Strange," and then realized it was a completely separate person.
All right, Josh, what were your initial thoughts for Doctor Strange?
I mean, it's kind of hard to add anything else, really. Same thing as you boys. I didn't really know too much about Doctor Strange. I hadn't read the comics, so I didn't really have the knowledge that, say, like a Malika had or anything. I just sort of wrote off the hype of everyone else, and everyone was saying that he was a pretty massive character, that he would come in and sort of be pretty heavy-handed when it came to the Infinity Stones and all that kind of stuff. So I was hyped, and I think it really lived up to the expectation. Again, I didn't know what to expect. I was just excited for the movie, and I think to make a long story short, I think we got a really good movie, a really good origin story that didn't feel just sort of like repeated. Didn't feel like it followed necessarily the formula that a lot of them had followed and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I long story short, I enjoyed it.
Did we think the introduction of like the mystical realm, call it, was like, did we think it was like at a good level? It wasn't too much, or it was too much, or you know?
I mean, I didn't feel overwhelmed by it personally, but I guess with this kind of character and the kind of movie, and sort of like we were talking about just before it started, like, introducing the multiverse, and as we go see later, Doctor Strange sort of playing around with different possibilities and timelines and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's sort of hard not to introduce all that kind of stuff, but I think they did it pretty well in a way that you weren't overwhelmed.
I think it came at a right time. Like, to compare it, let's just compare it to the DCU. You got like, Man of Steel that introduces the Krypton and the Intergalactic and all that. And then you go to Suicide Squad, where it's like, oh yeah, there's another dimension where wizards and sorceresses come from, and blah blah blah, and you never see that again in the rest of the DCU, and it's never really properly explored, and blah blah blah. While for this one, it's like it came at a right time, where you have Ant-Man. Like, they've said how the microverse and the multiverse are the same thing; they're all connected. So Doctor Strange is just adding on what they've been doing over the last couple of movies.
Malika, you said you read the comics. Does it veer off as much, or is it pretty similar?
I haven't read the origin comics, so it was just the new contemporary versions. So it was just whatever the comic universe was up to.
Yeah, I just remember the cartoon. Like, there's a Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah, there's an
yeah.
Origins animated. It follows pretty closely. Like the two actually mirror each other pretty well.
Yeah, and from what I remember is like it seemed a bit more like traditional, and the characters seemed like more. Maybe it was just the animator's choice, but they seemed more Asian. Like that kind of like I don't know, the setting, the time period, and where they were. But yeah, I thought yeah.
In the Doctor Strange movie, they try to move away from that because they were upset that Tilda Swinton played the Ancient One. Because I think traditionally he's played Asian, but I think they were trying to go for more of that because they didn't want to go with the Asian stereotypes, like the mystical monks stereotype. Besides Wong, they try to make it diverse.
Like with what happened with Iron Man 3
with the Mandarin, the whole Fu Manchu stereotype,
yeah.
Which is like, it's kind of sucky, right? I guess in the Iron Man 3, because it's like, yeah, you don't want to fit into this stereotype, but I feel like in this instance, there wasn't anything wrong with sort of fitting that stereotype. Like, I get that you're trying to play, not play like a race.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in Mulan, how Jet Li plays the Emperor. Well, originally that role was supposed to be the Ancient One in Doctor Strange. So, no, I'm kidding. That's not.
It's like, where are you going?
Also, just on the whole mystical thing, I feel like some of the stuff we had already explored in other movies, like, I know it's not directly related, but let's say when it comes to like a big bad, like Fantastic Four, right, where they had what they called the World Eater. Like, we'd already sort of, in terms of a type of villain, we'd already sort of seen or experienced that type of villain. And then when it came to like the other dimensions and stuff, we'd sort of already seen it in Ant-Man. So I feel like it didn't feel too dissimilar in Doctor Strange, although they were sort of delving into it a little further. It was like, oh yeah, we've already seen this kind of stuff before.
Yeah.
And because they only focused, I mean, they sort of touched on it, but I guess because they only focused on Dormammu, it didn't feel like we were being overwhelmed with all these other possibilities and stuff, which I'm sure are going to come in later movies. But it
made it easier.
Yeah, because it was just sort of, okay, that's our sole focus for this movie at least.
But even saying that, like when they first showed Dormammu, like the outline of him in the beginning, I thought it was Thanos because they showed this big purple guy, and I'm like, oh, it's Thanos.
Yeah.
And then when it came, I'm like, is this Thanos? And then I realized Dormammu is a completely different character.
Did anyone pay much mind to, since they mentioned the multiverse, like that, like the idea? Because I remember at the time I didn't really think about that idea that there'd be more than one universe, but now after Endgame, we know that there's different timelines, from what I understand anyway. But yeah, did you guys even like pick up on that as much?
What do you mean?
Well, like, because now, well, we just figure that there's just one single timeline. There's no alternate versions of anyone else or anything like that. But this like actually acknowledges that there is a multiverse where they even tap into the powers from these areas to channel it and whatnot and protect those, the boundaries between the multiverses from like, I don't know, what was it, colliding or whatever, or from dark forces. So like, I think this actually does acknowledge, but I didn't pay mind to it in the movie. I was just focused on Doctor Strange and I guess the Time Stone at the time.
Yeah, I didn't really like watching it again. Even like when we would have watched it the first time, we wouldn't really have paid. We would have just gone, oh yeah, sweet. There's lots of other realms in the mystical part of the MCU, but like it doesn't show you other beings or anything other than Dormammu. And so I think everyone sort of just brushed it off as like, it's cool. And it opens up a lot of possibilities, but no direct consequence to the MCU just yet.
Yeah, and I think if you sort of follow Marvel in any sort of respect, you sort of knew it was going to be introduced anyway. But like, again, I think they did a good job introducing it, but also making you not focused on it. It's like, oh, hey, this is it. We'll probably pick it up, but you don't need to worry about that right now because we're focusing on it.
Yeah.
But like, what's the difference? Okay, so we've got the 9 realms that shows all the different worlds. Then you got the multiverse. What's the difference? Is it like the realms are planets? Like, isn't it a similar concept of like interdimensions? Or
Mystical is dimensions, isn't it?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
separate.
Not realms.
Because
okay,
realms can still
And the realms are like
exist.
worlds, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could travel through space to access.
They can still
realms.
exist within the same dimension,
oh, okay.
but then the
Yeah.
dimensions is like something different entirely.
I always thought of the Bifrost as like an interdimensional thing. That's how they got from But yeah, no, that makes more sense. So it's more of an interplanetary thing in the realms.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I
Thank
feel
God.
like it was different in maybe the comics or the cartoons,
I mean,
the
you guys
9
probably know,
realms.
you guys probably know more than I do.
Like Valhalla. Is Valhalla even a realm? No, it's not.
I think so.
It's
Yeah.
heaven.
Or Nidavellir or Hell. Oh, I can't even
There's
remember.
hell. Then there was heaven, and they got cut off.
Right.
There was a battle with the angels, and Odin cuts it off from the world tree.
From Idris
Yeah,
Elba.
because-
That's not in MCU, but that's what
Yeah.
actually happens.
Yeah.
In Avatar.
I know in Thor Ragnarok, Asgard's represented as a planet or whatever that was. It was like a flat Earth situation.
Asgard is the people, David.
Sorry, the foundations are gone.
I think the dimensions are probably more comparable to DC, where you've got like Earth 616.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I was going to say.
You've got that sort of thing where there's possible different versions of characters, where the realms
would you
are like
say?
worlds.
So would you say like the 9 realms are like say Krypton and I don't
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Okay. Yeah. That makes more sense. Yeah.
we're using DC to make sense.
Oh no,
What
who
is
thought
that?
would ever do that?
But DC, like Malika said, DC just sort of does make it easy because you know you've got like Earth, what is it, 616, you've got Earth 1, you've got Earth whatever, and it's all just the same sort of characters with different versions of them.
Yeah.
What did we think of Caecilius? Caecilius?
Is it just
The villain?
Caecilius? Or?
Yeah. The villain.
He's
did
not
we
a
think
great
of him?
villain, but he serves his. I reckon he serves his purpose as being that intermediary. It's a villain we've seen before, where he hungers for a stupid amount of power. Someone's controlling him, and then once he gets that power, the end game isn't really an end game. Like he thinks it is, and that it will make him immortal. Blah blah. But it's just because he's gone power crazy.
I guess in that respect, you sort of knew what was going to happen with him as soon as you found out that what he was doing, like, you know, oh, I'm gathering power to get Dormammu. It's like, all right, dude, you're being used. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Sound
it's
like-
a villain we've seen before.
Well, originally the actor Mads Mikkelsen was supposed to play the
Mordo?
Dark Elf.
Oh, never mind.
What was the Dark Elf's name again?
Malekith.
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 Yeah,
But he
Malekith.
did want to. I think he did want to wear all that makeup. But like that actor, he's a hit and miss because he's played some really cool villains, like in Casino Royale. He played the Bond villain, but he's also a bit of a stand-in as well. Like he's like, oh, who's a good villain? Oh, we get this guy because he looks like a villain.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just it wasn't much to the role. And like I said when we were talking last week, the only thing that stood out with him was when that joke about oh, it's strange, perhaps. Who am I to judge? Like that's the only time that really stands out.
Mr.
Yeah,
Doctor.
Mr. Doctor. I love those one-liners. Those were like humor. They were pretty good. They weren't.
Yeah, I
forced
think
at
the one-
all.
looking back on going in the humor, I think I remember the one sort of bomb they dropped on trailer was when they gave him the Wi-Fi password, but it was like some weird, word.
Yeah.
You're like, oh wow, this is going to be, which is surprising because usually they don't drop like the really funny moments in the trailer.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're not savages.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that- yeah.
Yeah, it's the Wi-Fi password.
What is this? My mantra?
Yeah, I thought Caecilius, the actor, because he was great in Casino Royale, but in this he was a bit weak.
Yeah,
Role. But I did like that they explored with him the aspect that the good people, like the ancient one,
Yeah.
The
He-
good people were like, yeah.
that she was using dark powers. So like they were
Dark
acknowledging,
dimension.
yeah, that she was flawed and that so there was like some reason to what he was doing, but at the end of the day, his story wasn't all that complicated. I mean, I know he lost his family. There was some background there, but it was just like you said,
You know,
very
like-
simple.
Compare it to Skyfall. Again, I make a lot of Bond references here, but like where the character has something against M, but like you actually believe the performance. You actually are on board. Like I understand why this guy's got a hatred and why he's doing what he's doing. While this guy was like, again, like stand in bad guy. Let's just chuck on a backstory, which is again, and that was the superhero formula for a long time. But that's kind of what happened with him. It's like he has the backstory, but his performance doesn't really show the backstory. It's just like, oh yeah, family died. How many times we've seen this?
Yeah.
It's there, but you don't care about it.
No,
Yeah.
ironically. Oh well, actually, no. Bruce Wayne's done it how many times? Mordo's character was
Mordo
really.
was-
Did
I
did
found
we
him
like
more
him?
Interesting.
Yeah,
Towards the end,
They set him up.
Towards the interesting, I thought Mordo was more. Towards the end, I thought Mordo was more interesting.
He's set up as the next villain from the beginning, though. Like
I kind
you
of
can
thought he
tell.
was. I thought he was likable. I liked him. Like,
I like him, but you can tell. Like there's just little
Alright.
slips,
yeah.
like talking about his character and just some of the ways he looks at Strange or whatever as he becomes more the favorite of the Ancient One.
Even I think some of his interactions with the Ancient One sort of made you feel that he was gonna sort of turn a different way. Like even the disagreements that he had with her, like just in the way that they approach things, even though he's been with her for how long, like sort of made you think that he was going to not turn against, but turn a different way, I guess.
I feel like with him, because I think he's a villain in the comics, and they've set him up as the next big bad. But I feel like he's now the MCU has taken a whole new direction. What it seems with the whole multiverse and all that. I don't think he will fit in as the next big bad. I think they're probably going to have to keep him on as more like an anti-hero, like similar to Loki, as in he's not fully bad, he's not fully good, and because like it's just I can't see him fitting into the whole multiverse storyline. I feel like his storyline is very limited in that fact.
Or if they work him in with another villain.
Yeah.
A joint. I was just about to say like a joint villain movie.
Because I sort of agree. I think now that with the scale that we are at least with where we are now, although it sort of seems like Marvel's going to have to take a bit of a step back and sort of focus on those smaller villains again, and then build up to that really big bad. But I agree, David, in that like it will sort of feel a bit weak, I guess, if we're going back to a Mordo, which technically, I mean, you think about Doctor Strange, and he's already outclassed him in every kind of way.
Yeah. Well, give an example. Say like the old Sam Raimi Spider-Mans. Like we have like 3 movies setting up Harry Osborn to be the next Green Goblin, and I don't know what you guys thought, but in Spider-Man 3, it was just kind of like, it was just like wasted, and that's what the potential can be with Mordo. They can do something really cool and different with him, or they could just be like something that just doesn't work, and people just lose faith in the character, or like be indifferent to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see him joining up with a different villain to help, like to try and take down Doctor Strange. But yeah, I agree. I don't think I could see him as like the focal point, or I guess the focal villain for the next movie.
Or even being the person that Doctor Strange turns to after having to deal with everything in the multiverse and being like, hey, I was right. Like, be like the Magneto to Xavier, being like, hey, we're not exactly enemies. We're still friends. We just are completely on opposite sides of this debate.
I reckon one of the characters that really stands out, though, is Wong.
Yeah, definitely.
Wong, like, steals it. Like, in some of the scenes he's in, he pretty much steals it.
Wong, you're invited to my wedding.
Yeah. Like, he's just he was cast well. He's funny. And like, even if the humor isn't directly him speaking or actions or whatever, like, it's just stupid little things, like where he's never heard of Beyonce, but the next scene he's got it blasting in his headphones.
Yeah, it was it was a very limited role, but yeah, he was a good side character. I think he'll play more of a role though in the second one, maybe because I think fans have shown an interest in him in a sense, and especially the way he was in Infinity War and Endgame. Or again, there was tiny scenes but good dialogue between him and Doctor Strange. So I see that carrying through. Yeah.
Well, Wong is pretty much Strange's right hand in comics.
Mm.
Like when he takes over the New York Sanctum,
He's
Wong is pretty much like the caretaker while Strange is out doing what he needs to do.
He's Watson to his Sherlock Holmes.
I guess
Pretty much, he's Wongson.
like if Doctor Strange chooses to step down.
Wong-san.
Oh, Wongson.
You could see Wong stepping up.
Yeah.
If
Like-
he chooses to step down,
Well, like say, like some of the movies they're like, oh, I don't want to be the Sorcerer Supreme anymore. I don't want to be this anymore. If Doctor chooses to be there, I could see Wong taking that position. Like, but yeah.
Funnily enough, just a side note, in one of the recent comic lines, Loki actually becomes the Sorcerer Supreme.
of course he does.
That's pretty funny as well, like because in Ragnarok their encounter together, Loki and Doctor Strange.
Yeah, he like outclasses him. Like Loki's like powerless. It's so strange seeing him like that.
It's funny. He calls him the second-rate sorcerer. Did we have a favorite scene in the movie? Or any standout scenes?
Bargain or negotiate, whatever it was.
Which one?
The ending when is it
The time
Dormammu?
loop.
Yeah.
Is it Dormammu, I'm here to negotiate, or Dormammu, I'm here to bargain? The best,
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
yeah, like the best fights, like because you don't tend to care about the CGI Marvel. Well, I don't anyway. The CGI Marvel fight scenes. So having this this ridiculous time loop, like I was cracking up in the cinema. I was like, this is gold. Like,
I feel like that could have easily turned into like a Guardians fight scene where it was kind of a gag at the end. But
yeah,
I think it fit Doctor Strange very well. It was clever because it was showing. I think that was the first showing of how Doctor Strange it wasn't the first showing. That whole movie was a showing of how like innovative Doctor Strange is.
I feel like it's a little different to the Guardians one because at the same Guardians, like we've spoken about, really did feel like a gag, like the whole dance battle thing, and even though they sort of followed it up afterwards and they all came together and held hands and whatever, it still didn't feel like a serious ending. Whereas Doctor Strange, I feel, is a little different because although it sort of does fit into that sort of funny category, it does show him like dying over and over and over again, and that speaks to his power. And it's just like,
because he felt pain. He felt pain every death.
But it's like he's really sort of overpowered this big bad, like this universal level big bad, and sort of trapped him in a time loop. So yeah, it does fit into a gag, but I feel like looking past that a little bit, it actually sort of speaks to his ability a little more.
yeah. I think what makes it different is with Guardians, they were trying to make it as funny as possible. Well, I don't know. It's like it just is funny. It's not they have to even try and make it funny. Like it's just the whole situation's funny.
We were saying last time, like when we were talking about the villain, and we were like, it's funny that someone so powerful gets stuck in a time loop. But then it also shows this power when he figures it out on the very first loop. Like it happens, it loops, and then he's like, wait, something's wrong. And like that shows the power of Dormammu to, though he gets stuck in the loop, he picks it up straight away, where other villains might have taken a few turns to figure out that something was wrong.
Yeah. Also, Dormammu was voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch as well. Fun fact.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Imagine filming that one. He's just like, he just moves microphone to microphone.
Doctor Strange Genjutsu confirmed.
Shadow clone.
Have we talked about? We haven't really talked about Benedict Cumberbatch and how he was as Doctor Strange.
Right.
So it's Cumberbatch.
Cumberbatch, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been saying Cumberbatch for so long.
Cucumber snatch.
The U doesn't have the little dots above it.
Was it?
It's like cucumber.
Actually, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, Cucumber Batch. Was it you, David, that was saying that people were picking on his accent, his American accent? in this movie.
Yeah. A lot of people, a lot of the commentators I listen to tend to say, yeah, his American accent's shocking. He should just do his English accent.
No.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
Didn't even realise there was anything wrong with it.
Yeah, me neither. But then
I guess-
again,
Because even in America, like, there isn't one distinct American accent. There's like a different accent per state, right? It's
Yeah.
just like, so it's
In
like who's to
counties.
say- yeah, it's like who's to say what really counts as an American accent? And I don't know. I didn't find any issue with it. It wasn't like, oh yeah, this guy's trying really bad.
Yeah, but then the other side of the coin is I hate it when Americans try and do Aussie accents. So
Yeah, but that's
I-
just something that they don't pull off.
it's true, they really don't. Yeah, it didn't bother me, like I said, but then I like Tom Hardy's American accent in Venom, so who am I to talk? So,
I didn't even watch Venom. Yikes.
oh, you haven't seen Venom. I think to me, if it doesn't take away from the movie, then it doesn't really matter. Like their accent.
No, it wasn't just like I said, I didn't find any issue with it at all. But even if it was bad, it wouldn't have been.
maybe people associate Benny Cumberbatch as being English. Like maybe it'll be like if Rowan Atkinson did an American accent. Like I don't know, like they're just or Michael Caine or something. I don't know.
Penguins. He's easily one of my next in this new phase. Doctor Strange is probably like my top character.
Yeah.
I think similar. I don't know. In a way, I compare him to Iron Man just because he's a rich dude that, in he's like very egotistic, especially as a doctor, and then he's like humbled towards something greater. So I really like his character development in this, and again, I think he's just one of the most powerful members of the team, right? Like as of the moment.
I think like you said, he is essentially like he's pretty much primed to take Tony's place, right? Because it's like in terms of power, I mean, like you said, he's pretty much one of the most powerful. But yeah, even in his sort of character and his role, he sort of fit that exact copy in terms of a rich dude. His journey, I feel, was a little shorter than Tony to being humbled and all that kind of stuff, but he essentially fits that role pretty well, if that's what you're looking for.
What do you reckon, talking about side characters and in my background, what do you reckon about Rachel McAdams as the female side character? Like we've had a few now. What do you reckon? Where do we rank
she's
her,
not coming
or
back.
what do we think?
So that gives a good indication. Rachel McAdams won't be coming back for the second one. So
Isn't she?
no, well that's what's being said. But like I love Rachel McAdams. I think she's a great actress, and like I think she did a decent enough job. But she was an example of a female love interest in a comic book movie that doesn't really get that much to do, I found.
Yeah. She was sort of, she didn't really have much of a role, really, if you think about it.
She does somewhat save his life.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. She didn't have much of a role because outside of that scene, like she works up to the build up of him leaving essentially, and then you don't see her again really until that scene where she comes, saves his life, and then like there's nothing else for her to do.
I love Rachel McAdams. Like I'm a big fan.
She's great. She's
Yeah.
great. But I think in this movie, like David said, she just doesn't have much of a role.
I was just going to say, now you got the heavy hitters like Shuri,
Jane
Valkyrie, Captain Marvel, like female roles where they're actually at the front lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see Rachel McAdams.
Hope.
I can't see Rachel McAdams like doing up.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure her character in the comics is like night nurse or something where I don't know, she's just like a nurse. I don't know what she does, but
Actually, it's,
character. Sorry.
I was going to say, speaking of his love interest, though, I wonder how to actually put that in, because he does have one in the comics, but like I don't actually know how they introduce her or create her in the comics properly.
Well,
To see how they would make her in the MCU.
it sort of depends whether they actually want to pick her up, right? Because it's like Thor has a love interest, obviously, but it's like, is she like Jane Foster's sort of died off?
She's a beast sorcerer in her own right. Like she's pretty strong for a sorceress.
I guess
That
it just
Doctor
depends
Strange
if that's the way they want to do it.
Yeah.
It can be tricky to balance that like being a superhero movie and fighting to beat a big bad, but then also worrying about the love interest.
But like Thor Ragnarok proved you didn't need a love interest. I found like Valkyrie was in it, but there was no chemistry, and like unless the chemistry works, unless the film makes you believe in the romance, there's really no point in it being there because otherwise it just drags down the film.
What do you mean? Her and Hulk had great romance.
Aquaman.
I mean, chemistry.
Yeah, I did.
Scott Adkins has a cameo.
Yeah, a cameo. He has a full fight scene. I mean, he's only just a henchman though. But
And he gets killed by the cape, pretty much.
Who is this?
the guy who
Scott
gets
Adkins.
defibrillated
Oh yeah.
to death, basically.
Yikes.
I do like the humor that came with the cape, and like that scene was epic when he like walks up to the glass, and it shows the reflection of the cape on him. And then like later when he swings the cape on, like they were just beast scenes.
Yeah, and then when it first like saves him from falling, and he's just like,
Yeah.
When he's trying to run away, and the cape's dragging him in the other direction.
yeah, that bit was funny when he grabs the
Well, not run away, but yeah, he was going for like a weapon.
the axes and stuff, that suit thing, and the guy just dances into his position, being trapped.
He's just robots.
Oh, the special effects! I think they were decent in this. It wasn't really one I cared about in this movie, but
I thought they were amazing.
yeah.
I really like the other. Yeah.
What I should say is one I care about in general when it comes to Marvel movies. But this like showcased it very well, especially the first fight. I think it was the start where Sorcerer Supreme or the Ancient One fights off. Yeah, and the buildings are like collapsing on each other.
Inception. It just
that's
felt like
pretty sick.
Inception.
Yeah, it was Inception style. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had when. Oh, actually, one thing I was going to ask, that astral push thing that she does, I think is like such a powerful move that they don't.
Yeah, beast.
I feel like they don't do enough at times, but I don't know. It'd be
Almighty push from Naruto again.
Tensei.
It was huge for me in Endgame when she does it to the Hulk and Bruce Banner's pops out. I thought that was like, whoa! I didn't think it.
Yeah, I prefer when Strange. I know it's the Hulk, but just the fact that Strange just gets thrown into all these multiple dimensions.
Oh yeah,
Like,
Yeah, some of that stuff was creepy. Like the one that always gets me is when it goes into his eye and you see the little hand come out and like grab onto the edge of his eye. For me, it just like gives me weird feelings.
I don't know why. It just reminded me of that scene in Toy Story 2 where Woody has that dream about all the arms grabbing him.
Oh yeah.
But really, Doctor Strange is sort of ripping off scenes and stuff from other movies.
Do we know if Strange
2 out
can
of 10.
use the astral push?
If he can do it, yeah, I
I think
haven't seen him do it.
I don't think we ever see him do it.
He can astral project, but I don't know if he can. Surely he can.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
picked
if
up everything else.
he's going to take the title of Sorcerer Supreme, you'd assume so.
Could he have just done that on Thanos?
That's
Just
what I'm
walk up to
thinking.
him.
yeah. I don't know.
And that's Endgame done.
But things like the sorcerers have to obey a code. I don't know. They're like John Wick. They have to obey a fraternity or something.
Don't kill their dog.
Baba Yaga.
Time Stone was introduced.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It was called the Eye of what? The Eye of
Agamotto.
Agamotto. Yeah, that's it.
And then who's Agamotto? He creates an Infinity Stone, and then that's all we hear about this dude. Like, how beast do you have to be to create an Infinity Stone?
Actually, there was a lot of talk about time in this movie. Like, it was a huge, obviously, because of the time stone, it was a huge theme. But, like, I can't remember any quotes exactly, but there were a lot of allusions to it. And I was like, I'm surprised I didn't think of it as a solution to how they could defeat Thanos in the end. So, like,
well, we didn't really know what was going to happen at that point.
Yeah, actually,
like anything really. Like they could have used any of the stones if you think about it. Like,
yeah,
all the stones that we've seen up to that point essentially could have been a weapon against the boss. But it's like depends on what way they want to take it.
Robin, do you think the best way to take it would be Tenet, but it's Doctor Strange?
Tenet's just it's a whole nother level
I haven't seen Tenet.
that my brain
Yeah, I haven't
isn't
seen that.
prepared for. To be,
Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
stop
you're
talking. It's just not.
There's lots of as you go through the movie, there's lots of time things. Like he opens his drawer and there's like $10 million worth of watches, and then like it's a guy that's always in a hurry. Like at the beginning, every second counts to someone like him. Like whether he's saving someone's life or like as a doctor, but he's like driving and he's speeding, checking his watch constantly.
Yeah, even the fact, even when he's getting the crap kicked out of him, and his watch is pretty much the only. I get that it's the last valuable thing, but it's essentially the one thing that he wants to keep. And they focus like, there's that bit where he gets it back, and they like focus centrally on that watch and the fact that it's broken. Kind of stuff.
Ooh.
But it's funny.
Wow.
It's he gets the big revelation when time's actually slowed down when he's with the Ancient One.
Yeah.
It's just the contrast where everything slows down, and then that's when he starts figuring things out, and then when he can reverse time. That's a hectic scene. As he's walking down the street.
Yeah, I actually thought that was so interesting when the Ancient One was about to die, and yeah, everything just slowed down. Like you literally see a lightning strike moving heaps slow.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
That was it was.
And it's the sentiment as she's speaking, and she's like, "I've lived like many lifetimes or thousands of years," or whatever she says. But she's like, "Here I am, trying to slow down the very last moments." So it seems to stretch out. Like she's lived so long, but she's still afraid to die.
Yeah. Oh, that was a great scene.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what happens in the movie because I watched it when we were originally meant to do this like 2 weeks ago. But so he gets the time stone, right? And that's when everything pops off. That's sort of when it all happens. But then he comes back and he doesn't put the time stone back. He just keeps it on him. He just wears it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he like claims it as his own, like as the source of supreme. He's like, yeah, it's mine.
Everyone's still around. Like nobody's died yet, but he's just like, nah, I'm not giving this one back. That didn't make sense because I was watching it and I was like, he's really just keeping it around his neck. Like nobody's been like earn that. Like they talked about books being returned to the library, but the Eye of Agamotto, no, you can keep that one.
Yeah. And how good was he by then? Surely he wasn't that beast of a sorcerer yet. To
just keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he only masters it properly when he's like fighting Dormammu, and when he is reversing the street, like that whole action scene.
I mean, in Infinity War, it makes sense for him to keep it on him. Like, I guess,
Yeah, of course.
that'd be the safest place by then. But yeah, at the end of the movie, it's just like, looks good.
He first gets it, and then they're just like, yeah, it's fine, dude. Don't worry about it.
I guess maybe
They
it's
make
like
like
a
a
sign
big
of
fuss about
trust.
it at the beginning.
I also thought it'd be more central to that little room that it was in, because it was like placed right in the center of like the three headquarters, but really it didn't really have anything to do with it.
Yeah, that's true.
I felt like even though it's an alternative view on spirituality due to the mystics and all that, I found this film, I like the way they approached it in the sense, I don't know, because like a lot of films are moving more towards being skeptical and nihilistic about spiritualism and all that. I just like the whole aspect of how he comes in as a cynic of, like a man of science and, everything's got to be practical, and then just gets thrown into a world he just doesn't understand. He's like, oh, wow, I have no control. I have no idea what's going on. And all of this just makes no sense to me. And I kind of like that aspect of it. Like the spiritual side of things is not so much as tangible magic, but just this whole new realm that you just cannot understand. I found
even with his first encounter with the Sorcerer Supreme, where she starts showing him like the real basic sort of medical maps and things that he's already seen, and he like throws it back in her face. It's like, oh, what, like acupuncture and all that kind of stuff. But I think the thing behind like what they're trying to say is there's more to it than you think. It's just like, this is real simple. If you think about it with your knowledge, it's simple and it's basic, but there's always more to it than you think there is.
Yeah.
I also like the contrast, when he's first introduced to the Sorcerer Supreme. And she doesn't really approve of him. Like, not really. She doesn't think he's he's fit or anything. But on the other hand, Mordo sees a lot of potential in the guy. And then it kind of like shifts like where she, oh, I wouldn't say Mordo doesn't really see potential in him, but like he's just kind of just like everything I thought about was wrong. So it's just interesting to see that, you know, the people even in their their spirituality kind of like have to question their view in a sense or of where they're at.
I reckon, and then I think even though we were saying Caecilius isn't that great of a villain, I think that's where they were trying to do the sort of contrasting comparison of Strange to Caecilius, and then you get the two opinions. So Ancient One's sort of worried and scared that he'll become another Caecilius because he's so he wants to like he's knowledgeable and he reckons he's mad arrogant and he's like reading the books and going through all the crap and it's like already really strong. And then, like, she's worried that he might turn into another Caecilius because of the thirst for power. But then Mordo's like, this guy's actually not that bad. Like, he might put aside all of that arrogance and the wanting to be the best, and he'll sort of just learn. And then we sort of see both sides of that Strange, I reckon.
I think
Like, you don't just see one.
Mordo's issue as well isn't just with Strange. I think it's because they find out about Sorcerer Supreme, and I think he just realizes everything that he's been taught and essentially living is not
a lie.
Well, yeah, like a lie in a sense, but it's also like, you know, you've been telling me one thing and it's technically true, but you're also going around bending and breaking rules when you're the one breaking.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's frustration with Strange, but I think it's also frustration. He's essentially been fooled.
Yeah.
A little bit, you know, pissed off at the Ancient One and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think it was a good move for Doctor Strange because he learned from what the Ancient One was doing that some things, no matter what the cost, you just got to do it for the greater good. And that carries on into Endgame where, you know,
E.T.
It took me a while. I thought E.T. Go Home.
Literally, when you did that was the first thing that came to mind.
But yeah, I do wonder if they'll play on that in the next movie. Like, if he'll have any kind of guilt, you know, after. I mean, obviously, it was the only way to beat Thanos.
Strange doesn't come off as the guilt type, but
yeah,
he seems very cold as a person.
Yeah.
Well, not just that, but I feel like it's also like because he knew that there was only one way to do it, right? So it's like if you saw all 14 million however of possibility, and you knew that there was only one way, it's like I feel like it'd be more like sadness, guilt, because it's just like it's literally the only way we're going to stay alive. Unless they like, oh, was there a second possibility that he didn't see?
Yeah, Iron Man misunderstood
the
one.
He feels guilty because it's just like, oh, I skipped that one. Damn.
I found it interesting because, as well as this was a time like after Civil War, like similar to what we're going through right now. We didn't really know what was going on at the time, like with the Avengers. Where it was like we knew about Infinity War, but it was like a very uncertain time in the Avengers' lives, and it was just interesting to have Doctor Strange, and then you have right at the end, even the Thor, like you have the Thor post-credit scene. They're talking about where's Loki, where's Odin, and all that. I'm just thinking. I don't know. The film makes you forget that it's such an uncertain time in the Avengers' lives. While like I like Spider-Man: Far From Home, but the whole time you're watching that film, you're waiting. Like, can you please explain to me what's going to be happening after Endgame? Well, I didn't feel that way with Doctor Strange. I didn't feel the need to have to explain where the Avengers were or why things were the way. It was just a nice break from it all.
No, yeah,
so
true.
yeah,
it's a good point.
It possibly happens too fast for the Avengers, and like I reckon it's all contained within the mystical realms or dimensions for the Avengers to even have a clue what was going on. Like maybe Thor realized something would have been going wrong, and because maybe Heimdall would have noticed an Infinity Stone was out in the open. But other than that, I don't think the other Avengers would have known that the world was on the verge of ending.
Yeah, it was just good how it was just its own, like the fact that it was in the mystical realm, it could just be its own thing. The same thing with Thor Ragnarok. it was just its own thing happening out in space. Like you don't need to connect it to what's happening with Civil War.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's better in a sense because if Marvel does like do other things, then you lose sight and focus on the actual origin story that they're trying to like focus on in the moment.
Well, besides that
imagine
Thor
how-
post-credit scene, there wasn't any other characters.
Yeah,
there wasn't any tie-ins. So
Yeah, which
I think the fact that it
Perfect.
was also an origin story, so like they really did want to keep the focus
Hmm.
on Doctor Strange, whereas Spider-Man wasn't really an origin, like it wasn't an origin story at all. Like
no.
so it's just like you already knew Spider-Man was tying in.
Imagine if he'd been introduced before Civil War. That would have ended real
Strange.
quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
He would have flown in and gone, and everyone's just frozen. Everything's done. Yeah, he just whizzes them off. No and stuff. See you later, boys.
Oh, there was
Yeah.
one inconsistency I was wondering about if it is one. So you know in Endgame where they go back to get the time stone and the Hulk sees the ancient one.
Yeah.
And she's already aware of Doctor Strange. And she says that he's 5 years too late. So like it makes me wonder why in this
But
movie
they know all the time, can't they? Don't they?
Sorry.
Don't the Sorcerer Supreme knows all time?
Yeah,
So
so
they know
like,
from-
yeah, so like, why was she disapproving of? Was she just putting on an act or something?
Essentially, I reckon it could have just been an act to make him sort of realize that. Again, part of a humbling process, I guess.
Mm.
It's
I think also-
it's like when Doctor Strange found out the one possibility. Like, although he knew what was going on and he knew that what was going to happen, what needed to happen, he couldn't do or say anything to affect it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
If she had played a different hand, then that might have changed the outcome entirely.
Yeah. I see it like, again, I'm not going to compare the Ancient One to God, but like the whole idea of just because a being knows what, how time's going to work out, they are capable of not letting it affect their decisions. Like they will still do the things they're going to do, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Very well.
Very well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
They can still act in free will, yeah.
in this, she says to him, "I've seen your past, present, future, or whatever she says." See your things, Gundam. And then she's like, "Do you want to know your future?" And he's like, "No." Yes. And then she pretty much says, "I've seen lots of possibilities, but none of them are certain," or something like that. And I think that was an alluding or foreshadowing to Endgame, where there are all the possibilities, and you never know really which one is going to be the one. So she would have tried to, like, she probably would have looked forward and gone, well, which possibility actually happens? And then that could be also foreshadowing the multiverse. Seeing lots of different strange outcomes. But I don't know.
I do wonder how certain they were about Endgame from this point, like how it was going to go. Yeah.
I imagine they'd probably mapped it all out.
Well,
At least a skeleton of it all.
Yeah, me too. I reckon so as well.
Like I doubt with a multi-million-dollar franchise or billion, I doubt they'd just be sort of, all right, cool, we've done this movie. What do we do next?
Do you think, because you got The Flash coming out, and The Flash, they're bringing back Michael Keaton's Batman, Ben Affleck's Batman, they're talking about bringing back, even Arrowverse characters and all that. Do you think Doctor Strange 2 has potential, if they wanted to like, bring Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in, or bring...
If they do that,
Yeah.
it immediately goes to my number one, above Endgame and Infinity War. If they bring back Tobey Maguire in any respect, greatest movie of all time.
But that's it, like, just
they
take
could.
a stab at it. Sorry?
If they wanted to. If they wanted to. But even then, it's not really...
I just think it'd be
It's not
funny.
really...
The fact
It's
that...
not really a different character. It's still them.
No, but the fact that like Spider-Man and Peter Parker, as in I can't remember his name, but the fact that he's now established as sort of one of the next up and comers, going back into his past or even delving into different dimensions with him for some reason, and then like stumbling upon Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, I think would be hilarious.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
funny, but I'm just thinking. I think it's always the same person, just different circumstances have changed
Yeah, but you,
what
but you
their
can
life
have
is
that.
like.
Yeah, but you could have that, but just have Toby Maguire's. I don't know. It's like
As Uncle
it
Ben.
is
Even if
still
they,
the same.
even if they go into like, even if they go into one of the different dimensions and they just focus on like Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 3 when he's dancing down the street, I think that would be the best scene of all time.
Yeah.
It could be an
Or-
aged Tom Holland.
Yeah, 100%.
or they recreate it with Tom Holland.
I'd
No,
still
Mark,
want
it's
to. I
funny
want to
with
see
Tobey
Toby
Maguire.
face.
If Tom Holland does it, Tom
Yeah.
Holland will pull it off. He'll be
Yeah.
like, we actually kind of earned that.
He'll actually dance though, because he can dance.
Tobey
Like him.
Maguire, the whole reason it's funny is because it's just like, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah, but that's it. Like, rather than ignoring all those previous Marvel movies, you can make fun of them, being like, "Hey, no, they're just alternate versions of these people." Like, bring back Nick Cage as Ghost Rider and just lean to the Nick Cage of it all. Like, just have fun with it. Like,
Well, we don't have a new MCU Ghost Rider, so
yeah, true.
Why do you need
But
a
like-
new MCU Ghost Rider? Nick Cage is right there.
and we've got Wesley Snipes. We've got Snipes as Blade,
Blade.
and they bring him in. Actually, when is the new Blade ever going to come out?
Well, who knows?
It's like the only thing they've done with it is do a logo and Mahershala Ali's going to play him. That's all they got for it.
I'm pumped for it. I love Blade.
But it's even the talk about Tom Cruise being Iron Man. It's not so much I want Tom Cruise to take over being Iron Man, but because it's like Tom Cruise is this big action star, and he's like the standard, like, oh yeah, we'll just make him. I think it'll be like self-parody of being like, in another world, Tom Cruise would have been Iron Man because he's just the only one they would have picked. So I think it'll be funny to just, make fun of that and just play with it, but not have Tom Cruise as the next Iron Man, because then that would be unfair to Robert Downey Jr. Just
But also,
make it like
it's like-
one.
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense to just introduce somebody who hasn't been part of the universe at all. It's just like, you're now taking on the mantle of one of our biggest characters ever.
Yeah. But have you guys seen Tropic Thunder?
Yeah.
Yeah, like Tom Cruise in that. Like, that's the sort of Tom Cruise I want to see as like an alternate version of Iron Man. Like, just really ridiculous.
What about a young Pierce Brosnan?
as Iron Man? As Iron Man?
Yeah, young Pierce Brosnan. Just give him the goatee and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Or as
I can see that, yeah.
I can see him as an alternate
David
Doctor
James.
Strange, actually.
Yeah, to be
Number
honest.
one James Bond.
Number one,
Ah.
what are you?
Yeah, he's my number one James Bond.
So you guys are thinking
Then
like
Sean
this
Connery, then
multiverse
Roger Moore.
is
Sean Connery is obviously number one, but whatever.
a bit more like a Into the Spider-Verse multiverse, where you have all those different types of Spider-Mans. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah, see, I
thought
think-
that.
Yeah, and I feel like it could be funny to play with that if they wanted to. But yeah, definitely they could do something like that.
Well, I prefer that than them just being like, oh, all those other Marvel movies just didn't count. It'd be fun to be like, hey, what's Tobey Maguire doing after Spider-Man 3? Like, whatever happened to his character? Like, I think that'd be fun to explore. Like, did he ever learn more dance moves? I don't know.
It would be cool, but imagine how hard it would be to cast all those other versions.
But they're doing it in
of the
Flash,
characters.
in DC. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like with what Marvel has, they can do it if they
That
want to.
Marvel could,
Yeah, but
like they said, if they're doing it with Flash and Flashpoint, then it's you can very easily do it. With Marvel being at the moment 10 times as successful as the DC universe.
I don't know if they could get Andrew Garfield back, but I can see them getting Tobey Maguire. He's not really doing anything.
Didn't they
these
need
days.
Andrew Garfield back? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Maguire would do it for the memes, man. He just joined
100%.
back for the memes.
They did get Simmons back, so J.K. Simmons, so
Oh yeah.
he's sick. I think. Did you want to? We can cap it off there. Eh? I don't know
Yeah.
if there's much more actual
Now it's-
Doctor Strange.
Now we're talking about Tobey Maguire more than
Yeah. All right. For closing thoughts, we'll go David, Josh, Mark, me.
Can we give it like out of like 5 Tobey Maguires? Like,
yeah.
Out of 10 Tobey Maguires.
As long as you put Tobey Maguire's face on the screen when you edit this, Zeta, I'm fine with doing it.
How many Tobey Maguires? How many Tom Hollands to one Tobey Maguire?
Oh, that's like interdimensional.
On a
Tom
scale,
Holland's half the Spider-Man that Tobey Maguire was. So what's
on a scale of Tom Holland to Tobey Maguire, what do you rate this movie?
for me, it falls Andrew Garfield.
Oh,
Miles Morales.
Yeah, David. Closing thoughts.
yeah, like I said, this film regenerated my interest in this Marvel MCU because it showed something different. It showed a completely alternative aspect to the MCU. I enjoyed Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. I enjoyed the story, even though, yeah, in some ways it was a simple origin story. The concept wasn't simple, and it made the film interesting. And overall, I'm very excited for Doctor Strange 2 and where that's going to go. And yeah, Kevin Feige, bring back Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to David. Although it was an origin story and it did sort of hit the points that it needed to as an origin story, I think they did it really well. Similar to other sort of movies that we've talked about, they introduced different themes and different sort of things that they'd be exploring in the following movies, but they didn't overwhelm you with it. So I think they did that well, while also expanding on themes and other stuff that you've already seen in other movies in terms of, like you mentioned, mystical and all that kind of stuff with Thor and Ant-Man already exploring them. So overall, I really enjoyed it. Like David said, I'm hyped for number 2. I'm excited to see where they take it, and I'm also excited to see the role that Doctor Strange sort of takes in this new phase, and how he sort of fills in, whether he's going to want to take Tony's mantle, or whether he just takes it and then has to struggle with it, or what's going to happen. I'm excited. But yeah, 8 Tobey Maguires out of 10. This one?
Yeah. How many Tobey Maguires did you give it, David?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll give it 8 Tobey Maguires. Yeah.
Oh, no, you know what? I'm going to go 8.5 Tobey Maguires out of 10.
Well, I'm going to go. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I really enjoyed this movie. 8.5 Tobey Maguires out of 10.
I raise your Tobey Maguires.
Oh, you had this 12, David.
Is that good or bad?
I don't know. I guess you just like the other movies a bit more.
Yeah,
What was
probably.
my ranking on
I
it?
think I had this pretty high.
Third. You had this third, Malika. And then
Yeah.
Josh's one was fifth.
Yeah, I was going to say. I thought I had 5th.
Yeah. All
Yeah, I
right.
really enjoyed
My
it.
final thoughts. Like I said in my initial, really enjoyed this movie. It was a great introduction to the mystical dimensions and bringing in that whole multiverse portion of things. We got another big bad, Dormammu, who pops up time and time again in the comics. Like, he's going to break that promise and he will come back, like 100%. Hoping he comes back in his physical body, like you see in the comics and cartoon. Casting was great. Side characters were really good. Villain could have been a bit better. And like we were saying about the effects, I really like the effects. The way they did all the reversals of time and all of that was awesome. Dialogue was really good between characters. Soundtrack from memory, not bad. I think I quite enjoyed it in the movie. So my rating, I'm going to give it, it fits my ranking as well, 9.1.
Tobey Maguires.
Tobey Maguires.
That's a
How are
lot.
you going to get a 1/10 of a Tobey Maguire head on the screen, by the way?
That's a lot of Tobey
I'm waiting to
Maguires.
see.
That is a lot of Tobey Maguires.
Still not enough Tobey Maguires. You can never have Tobey Maguire. Let it be known. Let the record show. Toby, if you're watching, big fan.
Come on our next podcast, by the way.
I don't know how much more I can add to what we've already said about Doctor Strange. I think I ranked it 6. It's definitely in my top 10. I definitely think for an origin story, it was easy to follow and very enjoyable and engaging, and I really liked that. I like in a sense that it was similar to Iron Man's one, where you had this egotistical guy humbling himself and going to something greater. Something for the greater good. And I think there's just a lot of potential for the characters they move forward within this movie. Like obviously Doctor Strange. Then you got Mordo, whether he joins like some kind of cabal of villains or something, or he becomes someone who Doctor Strange turns to for, some kind of controversial help. But yeah, Dormammu's definitely a very powerful character that I for sure we'll be seeing again, and it'll be interesting to see how much elevation they go up from within Phase 4 with the mystical stuff, and in having Scarlet Witch in the mix will be interesting too. I think it's just going to be a really chaotic movie, the sequel. So for my Tobey Maguire rating, I'll give it maybe 8.3 Tobey Maguires or something like that. Close to 8.5 for sure. But yeah, that's how many Tobey Maguires I'd give Doctor Strange.
Can we rate all of our movies with Tobey Maguire?
Oh, and also shout out to budget Joaquin Phoenix in this movie.
We didn't talk about him at all.
Yeah. I mean, wasn't much. I don't know how much we can talk about.
I just hope he rocks up in the Joker sequel as Joaquin Phoenix's long lost brother.
Yeah, if like Joaquin Phoenix gets a bunch of other Jokers to like confuse the police or whatever, and that Doctor is one of them.
No, it's the DC multiverse. In one of the other, he's the Joker in one of them.
Benedict Cumberbatch is one of them.
I will say it's a bit of a Debbie Downer knowing that this is the first year in a while that we didn't get a Marvel movie at all. So, hopefully things change with COVID next year and coming months. I don't know. I'm pretty keen for WandaVision, even though I have no clue what the GO is with that one. But yeah, see what they got.
Well, it's probably going to lead into Doctor Strange 2, so we have no idea what's happening with WandaVision. That will give us an idea what Doctor Strange 2 will be like. It'll be out there, it'll be wacky, and that's what everyone's saying. That Joaquin. They're saying the Marvelverse is turning into Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. All right.
On that note,
what?
Are we raring?
You're ending.
Oh yeah. Check out our yep.
Check out our socials.
Yeah, check out our socials.
What just happened?
I'm so tired.
Brain glitch.
What? Oh yeah. Thanks for watching.
Tracy is caught in his own time loop.
So tired. All right. When I say thanks for watching, then we go straight into it. Thanks for watching.
Red.
And there, I can explain your very special heritage. Finally get to be the father I've always wanted to be. Excuse me. Gotta take a whiz.